So in this section, let's practice using the product life cycle a little bit further. So you recall, promotional core messages will vary as the product moves through the life cycle. In market introduction, the basic promotional objective is informing and building that primary demand. So your messages tend to be things like the new idea is good. Promotional tools that give more information tend to be more useful, personal selling, and business markets do tend to see both personal selling and sales promotion. Market growth stage, message changes to our brand is best, building that selective demand. Mass selling becomes more feasible at this stage, especially among final consumers. B2B personal selling and sales promotion remain important. In market maturity, persuasive promotion takes priority. The main message is, well, effectively, our brand is better, really. B2C will see more mass selling and sales promotion. B2B, we may see more aggressive personal selling. Strong brands can use more reminder type promotions. Promotions work to maintain or strengthen desirable habits and positive relationships that you've hopefully been building from prior stages. In sales decline, the message is along the lines of let those who still want us know that we're still here. Promotions, of course, vary based on your strategy and will depend on your target market. So as always, this will vary based on your target market. For example, you may have a business product where a set of family businesses adopted inventory software from you years ago and never changed. In sum, different promotional mixes are more effective at different stages of the product's life cycle. While promotions are a bit more clear-cut because we tend to have more clear-cut objectives, pricing is a bit different because the price is based on the type of value. In general, prices do tend to be higher, but then level off or start dropping, but that all still varies. So in the first stage, we tend to be focused on balancing, recouping our costs, and spending to grow. Pricing too low means it takes longer to generate revenue, it's harder to raise prices later, and customers could get the wrong idea about the value. But if you price too high, you just don't get the sales. In the introductory stage, we are more often guided by our costs. We do still consider competitors and what the market is willing to pay, that value, but we largely still do go for cost approaches like pricing for a target percentage of profit per transaction. This is also where you might tend to see the beginnings of skimming or penetration. So price skimming, higher starting price to gain higher margins, slowly lower, or again, price penetration, price low to gain fast market acceptance, and either raise price later or rely on other revenue streams. Growth stage, we still see that penetration or skimming if we started it earlier, or maybe even starting it now. We may see more competition-based pricing because, well, now we have more competitors and we may base off another competitor's pricing. This doesn't mean ignore our costs or what customers will pay, of course, but competitors now are more of a thing. We also tend to see psychological pricing more often. So this is along the lines of using psychological elements to urge customer behavior, things like pricing $10 versus $9.99, the way you price your product lines, that sort of thing. Maturity stage, you'll remember customers know you pretty well and are quite a bit more jaded and may even be very price sensitive. So we tend to see more demand-based pricing where it's a matter of what the market is willing to pay. And remember, we'll see other pricing techniques in action, but it's just that demand is more likely. Finally, in decline stage, this again varies a lot depending on what your organization chooses to do, whether to divest, harvest, or invest further. You'll see some firms use loss leader pricing or below market pricing where they price below cost to get customers to get rid of inventory or direct customers to other products in the mix. We may also see, though, that market shifts or reinvents itself. So we'll see that demand pricing again. If you still have customers and you're now the only organization making records or horse-drawn carriage supplies. In sum, remember the product lifecycle helps us predict likely costs and likely customers. but doesn't actually say what the organization might find is the best fit for them based on their particular cost structure, positioning, overall product mix, competition, and beyond. So this is a nice handy chart that gives you a nice summary of common ways we alter the marketing mix in response to the extent the product has been adopted by the market, so that PLC. This one is nice by discussing the overall objectives to gain awareness, to stress differentiation, to maintain brand loyalty, and to effectively harvest or delete. So a major part of using the product lifecycle to manage your product is knowing when and where you actually need to do certain marketing actions. When should you start to ensure promotion focuses on your brand versus the product category? When should you anticipate that competitors might actually begin to drop out? Should you anticipate a very long maturity period or a very short one? There are 3 factors of the product lifecycle that can help you tailor your marketing strategy. First, the length of the product lifecycle. This is how fast it takes the product to go through the stages. Some industries are more likely to have short PLCs, such as for fashion or electronics. Other categories, such as business devices, a restaurant concept, or cars, might have longer PLCs because adjustments are easier to make and customers are willing to remain with this product category. For example, 4-door sedans and diners survive in some shape or form, but pagers and leg warmers usually have largely declined, at least among the general public, because it's stronger for certain segments such as dancers or fashion groups, after all. The shape of the product life cycle. The shape determines how fast or long certain stages are. Certain products are a lot easier to learn and adopt than others. You can imagine how quickly a yo-yo is easy to diffuse into a market versus something more complicated and expensive. So we'll cover major factors that affect adoption rates in the next few slides. Finally, customers in the product life cycle. In essence, certain types of customers are more likely to be present in different stages of the product life cycle. So let's dig into examples of length and shape. The typical product life cycle is shaped like a bell curve. Loop. But you can see how lengths and shapes can vary. We often estimate the likely length and curve based on similar products, if there are any, that is, and market research. But sometimes that only takes us so far. So let's look at some variations. You see here the lines have different lengths, as do the stages. You can further see the curves differ. So for example, with a high learning product, it's likely difficult to learn and communicate, which means slower and smaller adaptation. Meanwhile, a low learning product, a product that's easy to learn, has a larger total market and went more quickly through the early stages. You can see how the high learning product's intro stage is very long, while it goes more quickly in the latter 3 stages than for the lower learning product. Next, you can see that not all stages are really a given. Some product concepts die out very fast. Some products, such as this fashion product, comes in and out of prominence. It never quite dies. So you consider gene cuts or colors coming in and out. So what you'll see is that product managers will seek to delay this decline stage by aiming to give the market a good reason to stay with their brand and product category. And third, sometimes you go up and down slower or quicker. Even for things like fads, it can just be that it hovers at very low levels where it certainly grew fast, declined fast, but never quite declined out. For example, technically, Thai still makes Beanie Babies, harvesting. They're just less widely available. It'll remain to be seen if, say, things like fidget toys are more like yo-yos where they come in and out, or they're just sticking around. So what does this mean for managers? Well, this helps us anticipate how quickly stages might go, and therefore what changes in a product, its use, its image, or its positioning may be needed to extend that product's life cycle. Remember, the product lifecycle concept can't tell us the precise length of a product's life cycle or its duration at any stage, but it can help us forecast future events and suggest appropriate strategies based on their particular situation. So, as a quick reflection, consider, how does your product rate on each of these? What would your chart look like? So now let's talk the rate of adoption. An important part of using the product life cycle is knowing when the stages might actually be happening. The rate at which the market adopts the product is very important to anticipating the timing of your marketing strategy. The following are factors which can affect that rate of adoption. Take a look at the word and see if you can guess whether it will increase the ease or speed of adoption. First, complexity. So how difficult is it to use or understand a product? So the more complex the product, the slower its diffusion. So very different for a new financial product versus a ball that lights up when bounced. How about compatibility? This is how easily the product and its use fits in with your life, values, behavior, habits, existing experience. So incompatible products diffuse more slowly than compatible products. So you can imagine how dishwasher pods worked very well with existing ways people knew for loading their dishwashers. Just use the tablet or packet rather than pouring powder. The more compatible it is with things, the better. And so Apple uses this strategy for their family of products. What about relative advantage? This is the degree to which a product is perceived as superior to existing substitutes or alternatives. So the higher the relative advantage, the higher the rate of adoption. So say this toddler product has a lid that lets toddlers get food without spilling seems much more useful than existing Tupperware products. The fact that K-Cup brewers can quickly brew a single cup of coffee in so many flavors is relatively easily understood. How about observability? This is the degree to which the benefits or other results of using the product can be observed by others and communicated to target customers. So as you can imagine, the more observable, the higher the rate of adoption. For example, when Apple iPod first came out, they used white earbuds to boost their prominence. Things like distinct white earbuds or a distinct look of Starbucks coffee cups makes it easier for people to notice it and talk to others about it. Trialability. This is the degree which a product can be tried or sampled effectively on a limited basis. The higher the trialability, the higher the rate of adoption. So a low-priced product is easier to try than something that's expensive. It's much easier to try out a new cereal brand than a TV. As another example, it's easy to have a friend play with your new phone game or to try out mobile ordering when you can just hand over your phone. Something like a car may be a bit harder to try out because you have to find a friend with that particular car, go to a dealer for a test drive. So as an example, how about scooters? They have strong observability. You see someone using it. And trialability. Your friend might let you try it. It also might have strong compatibility and low complexity because the act of pushing yourself along and balancing is a lot easier than say with bikes or skateboards. In sum, the characteristics of the product matter because they affect that rate of adoption. The rate of adoption can affect how quickly you can anticipate the product life cycle to go and how quickly certain stages, such as the growth, might go. Now let's talk people. A final way to understand the PLC is that certain types of customers are more prominent in certain stages of the PLC than others. Knowing who you need to appeal to and how will help you better tailor your mix. So this adoption curve shows when different groups tend to accept ideas. We can use these to tailor our plans. This model shows general trends, however, the precise makeup will vary according to your product and market. So generally speaking, early adopters make greater use of third-party information sources and can manage risk, while the later adopters tend to rely more on group norms and personal sources of information and are less able or willing to accept or manage the risk of a new product. So let's go for each. Adoption curve categories. Innovators, these are the first to buy and don't mind taking some risks. Innovators search out product information and rely on impersonal and scientific sources or other innovators when making their decisions. Early adopters, these are well respected by their peers and also often serve as opinion leaders for others. Of all groups, this one has the most contact with salespeople and other people in these later groups. High satisfaction among early adopters can aid word of mouth and is considered highly credible. And so marketers really focus on early adopters because while the innovators adopt first, they're considered more out there to influence later adopters. Early adopters are more likely to be embedded and have more social connections with these later adopters and so can more easily exert influence. As you can imagine, you may be more skeptical with a friend who's always getting the latest and greatest no matter how good or not it is versus the friend who's more deliberate. Next group is that early majority. The early majority wants to avoid risk and waits to consider a new idea until many early adopters have tried the product and liked it. This is a group of deliberate decision makers. They have extensive contact with salespeople as well, mass media, and early adopter opinion leaders and other group information. Lots of social contacts again. Now we go to the late majority. These folks are cautious and tend to be skeptical for this category. This group makes less use of marketing sources of information and instead rely on other people and sources for that product or category. For example, a person who adopts only because their friends all have. This group also tends to be made up of people at lower social status, where there's more risk in selecting the wrong type of product in terms of financial or social capital. Finally, we have they're calling the laggards or non-adopters. These folks prize tradition, are very suspicious of new ideas for that product or product category. They may also likewise be in a lower power position where they really do not have the financial or social capital to make risky decisions. By the time laggards adopt an innovation, it's largely outmoded. Laggards tend to listen most to other laggards or other personal information sources, making them pretty difficult to reach. So question, what type are you? Well, that's going to depend on the product, isn't it? Keep in mind that some people may be innovators in some categories, but laggards in another. For example, a person who loves the latest and greatest in smartphones may be super suspicious of changing their cleaning regime. Not all people are able to or willing to adopt an innovation in others. Likewise, what products they are an opinion leader might vary too. Different conditions must be met, and you can aim different marketing mixes toward each. So in sum, people respond differently to promotions depending on their adoption style for that particular product or product category. Different mixes will be needed to address the different category members. So let's continue talking about people. So just to recap, we care about these types of customers because we know they have different needs. Innovators are more likely to thrive on excitement and having the latest product. However, we know those later on need to have greater certainty. The book covers different barriers to adoption that remind us the different types of objections we need to address for our customers to agree to that exchange. So customers may not literally say these things are the reasons, but these are things you need to address. So for example, usage reasons. This product's use does not fit with the customers. It may be the product's use itself. It can be whether it's compatible with other practices they do. It can be just pushing them to make a change in what they do. Value. Insufficient value to the customer compared to what they're doing, and they have no incentive to change. There may not be any direct competitors, in fact. It may just be convincing customers to bother trying something new. A previous class had few competitors, for example, but soon realized that their customers were already making do with how they currently stored personal items. That team had to overcome past habits and apathy. Risk. The product may be risky socially or financially. This is again a matter that you need to address the safety of the product, its durability, or perhaps the stress that it will actually increase their social standing. For groups B2B and B2C alike, will this be hard to explain to a group? And finally, psychological. Customers may decline to adopt a product because of cultural differences or image. The story goes that SUVs position itself as a more adventurous alternative to the for sedentary, boring people station wagon. The SUV, in fact, shared many of the same benefits of the station wagon for room and capacity, but that younger, adventurous image drivers wanted to cultivate mattered. And in fact, psychological, you'll see that in organizations where they may decide they don't need something or they've always done something a certain way. So the book gives you a great example with electric cars. A past ad pushed against the perception that electric cars can't make long trips by proclaiming their electric cars can easily handle a trip to Las Vegas, a drive that people in Los Angeles recognize as long distance with large stretches between services. The concrete image of making the drive to Las Vegas could help customers visualize and perhaps break down their concerns of using electric vehicles. In sum, understanding the types of customers present can give us a better sense of the types of objections customers may have for your product. You can then seek to show them the ways their objections is no problem at all. So as an activity, I encourage you to chart your own product. And hint, hint, this is something you often learn through a combination of reflection and research. But the idea is give it a try, and if you do a nice one, feel free to use it for your portfolio exam. So a major concern for marketers is ultimately recognizing that throughout the product lifecycle, customers' needs change and the firm has to account for different competitors in the market. To respond to this, firms can adjust their strategy for the product, the market, or even both. It usually ultimately comes down to firms try to differentiate so that they're not competing head to head. Instead, they try to carve up the market and be specialists at serving a particular subset of the market. Key issue, we want to avoid a price war. No price wars. Where customers see little difference between competitors, so all we can compete on is price. Instead, we want to do product or market modifications to sufficiently be different in the eyes of the customer. And so another major way we manage our products is that we might find we need to reevaluate our product's positioning. As a quick recap from the segmentation chapter, positioning, how the customers perceive your product in relation to competitors or competing alternatives in the market. Repositioning is adjusting how the market sees your product along key traits. One quick warning is that they use the word downsizing and trading up as to how an organization may change a product's quality. These words have different meanings to customers when trading up refers to the way they opt for a product they see as higher quality over another, such as switching to eating more steak as opposed to ground beef. To wrapper up, sorry, how to do it, here's some repositioning example. Burger King. They've become more of a global brand, but they were still struggling behind other fast food competitors. So their repositioning plans became a part of Burger King's larger Reclaim the Flame and Royal Reset strategic shifts. So this article, if you click here, discusses their Have It Your Way repositioning and rebranding effort kicked off by the You Rule campaign. This video quite a bit longer, but if you're interested, it gives you a great tour of how repositioning efforts are often paired with other substantial strategic changes, from store closures to the refocus on the Whopper over seasonal items. So to sum up this section, product management is a long game. We often shift how we are marketing our products to better realign with customers and other external conditions. For what it's worth, I think it's working. I've heard multiple kids singing this song in the wild. Anyway, so that's it for this section. If the next section, we're going to be talking brands and branding, the ways, a wonderful tool for how we differentiate ourselves and our product. So with that, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at llouis@laverne.edu, and have a great day or evening or what have you, wherever you're at.